Today in Flex in the City, we talk to Michael Fox, CEO of JP Morgan's EU Merchant Services and Head of Payments Ireland, as he shares his thoughts on critical importance of social mobility and his passion for encouraging new talent to join financial services. All that happening right now in Flex and the City.
Hello, everybody. This is Rachel Treese from Flex and the City, and I'm absolutely thrilled. We've actually got a celebrity in our midst this afternoon. His name is Michael J. Fox. Isn't that correct, Michael?
It is, albeit I'm glad we're doing this let's put it this way, less by screen, so you can actually see I'm actually a different Michael Fox, but yeah, close but not quite.
Close but not quite, indeed. And Michael is the CEO of JP Morgan's EU Merchant Services and Head of Payments in Ireland. I first met Michael when he came to Luxembourg over 6 years ago, and it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show, Michael.
Yeah, thank you very much for the invitation, Rachel. I've been so excited about coming along to this and sharing with you. I've been waiting a long time and finally here, so I really appreciate the opportunity. Very excited.
It's a great pleasure. So I'd love to hear a bit about you and your journey, and in particular, what might have impacted, your own leadership and your own leadership style as that journey unfolded, and where you were born, where you came from, and how you ended up doing the job you're doing now, Michael.
This is going to be a lengthy response, particularly at my age now. But yeah, where it all started. So I'm back to where I started. I was born in Ireland, but I was raised in the UK. And so moved over when I was probably about 2 or 3 and raised pretty much in London. I came from a background, there was a kind of fair amount of poverty, and we were certainly under the social mobility measures, if you like. And, that certainly created for a kind of difficult upbringing around, must have been late 70s into the 80s. And so I ended up leaving school actually at the age of 16. And that was there wasn't really a choice, and certainly wasn't an expectation and drive to go on to higher education at that point. And so I left and I joined NatWest Bank. And I worked at NatWest for a few years and traveled for a year at some point. I really wanted, when I was coming back though, to join an investment bank. That appears to be where the action was happening, and I was determined to get a foot in the door. And so I seen an advertisement in the Evening Standard. This would be on the Wednesday. I was due to rejoin actually NatWest on Monday. And there was a data entry clerk required at an American investment bank. And I thought, well, that's a foot in the door. And so I went along to the agency. I could type fast because in those days you had to encode checks, for those that know what that meant. And so it meant I was a part typist, so it meant I passed that test. And I got an offer late on the Friday to join JP Morgan. And so I had the choice at that stage of rejoining NatWest and carrying on my work there, or alternatively, again, joining an American investment bank. And I just knew, again, as soon as you got your foot in that door, then things could happen. And they certainly did for me. That was back in 94, I want to say. And that was back at JP Morgan Asset Management. So JP Morgan Asset Management led to Chase Manhattan around 2000. Of course, they merged. So I was back to where I started. Throughout that career, I worked in sales, client management, Middle East for a number of years, 6 years. I was covering some of our largest asset managers on the client coverage side. Then I moved for a very brief time over to Brown Brothers Harriman before I realized I really enjoyed working for a large bank, universal bank. And I rejoined JP Morgan just a short while later to run their securities lending teams on the sales side, as well as client management. And that's when Lehman's actually happened under my watch during a period of financial crisis. Yeah, so that was a really incredibly interesting time, difficult, challenging, but that's also where you cut your metal in a lot of ways. And I certainly learned a huge amount. Fast forward, then I moved across to Prime Services. I worked there for about 5 years before returning back to Security Services, managing client solutions implementation teams, before moving to Luxembourg. So Luxembourg was about 6 years ago now, and that was mostly to manage our Brexit migrations of services, opening up new branches, and really changing the profile of our centre, far more front office orientated as well. So huge amount happening. And latterly, because I got to know the payments business quite well whilst I was in Luxembourg, then this opportunity came up in Dublin And as I kind of recall all of that journey, I've always kind of wanted to learn new things. And, I benefit of working for a large organization that offers mobility, whether it's by career or whether it's by geography. And I've certainly taken advantage of all of that. So I'm now in Dublin. There's a degree of fate coming back to Ireland for me, and I'm certainly enjoying myself. So here I am.
Wow, fantastic. Curious question, financial crisis and the work you were doing in the financial crisis. What was one of your big leadership lessons, Michael, during that challenging time?
So communication. And so there were so many different moving parts. Lehman's was one of our largest borrowers in the program. The typical lenders in our program were pension funds, asset managers. And so our clients were well protected because they were collateralized for loans, but we had to do a huge amount of communication to unwind collateral positions, to reinstate client portfolios, to let the communication happen through the client organization about what was happening and the timeframes in which we could reconstitute our clients' accounts, etc., and let alone the organization internally at JP Morgan communicating. So I was managing a large amount of communication. And so, again, there was decisions that were made very dynamically. There was people to form into dynamically. There's an organization to keep informed. And so the power of communication was what I came away understanding how incredibly important that is in large organizations and how clients rely upon a steady hand, that they understand what they need to do, that they communicate clearly. And that was certainly, and it was also a time when you kind of ran to the fire, really. We were working 20-hour days. You knew what you had to do and doing the right thing for your clients that really came to the fore, and being empathic to understand the client's dilemma, and therefore having to second guess and really inform into what they needed in order that they can manage their stakeholders. It was an event that I'm likely to ever see again, I hope not, but it was one that really did make you understand what leadership looked like. And lots of that was intuitive too. And so you did what you felt was the right thing, you were guided by that, and invariably that gave you the right answer, it gave you the confidence of your stakeholders, and you could build upon that.
Very good. And so tell me a little bit, Michael, about your own personal journey. You told me a little bit about, that you're born in Ireland and the social mobility and moving to London. But I know there's another part of your personal journey. So I'm curious, about how the parallels between that and your work as a leader.
Yeah, during that journey, if I look back, there's many things I'm really proud of. And when I think about some of the work now, I'm in a very privileged position to make a difference for others. And I take that seriously. And, I try and promote that culture of impact. But one of the things I do regret most is actually not coming out. I'm gay. I did not come out until I was after 30. And so when I think about, the importance of being authentic, I also understand at the other end of the spectrum, if you're not, how that can really inhibit, it can constrain you, it can stop you achieving your potential. And so when I do look back, again, my biggest regret is not coming out sooner, that I could be, if you like, have this weight and this burden lifted off me. And that was much of that self-perceived too. And so, again, once I did, I do realize now that how that allowed me to be the person I am, and warts and all, so to speak. But there's a tremendous release. And if I look back at my own personal career, the impact that I have, the leadership that I've been able to hopefully convey and impact upon others, there was a release moment for me. And that was certainly at that time. I like to think that organizations are a little bit different now, because that was touching 20 years ago. And so when we think about the DE&I efforts that most, if not all, organizations advocate for now, at the crux of all of that is inclusivity, it's acceptance, it's encouraging people to be who they are, being their authentic selves at work. It's not just a cliche. It encourages differences, it celebrates those, and it allows a safe place, regardless of what's going on in the world, that people can be themselves at work, and that produces positive outcomes for them. It produces positive outcome for the company, and encourages others too, and it sets role models. So again, my own personal journey, was for me personally, it was difficult, There are probably things that would have changed. If I think about where my life started, it really was around that time. And I also think about the impact that I had upon others, including my own family, that, I kind of look back and wish it were different. However, having said that, I am, again, a product of my experiences. And I'm here to tell anybody that's listening, it's, take that step. And if you're unsure, find others that have been through a similar journey, and you're not alone. And I can speak from experience again, when you do make that leap, it's not as big a leap as you might think it is, and there's other people there to help catch you and protect. So, yeah, I'll leave that at that, Rachel.
So thank you, Michael. So if you were to give some advice to a young person who was starting in financial services now, or if you were to look back and give some advice to 21-year-old Michael, what advice would you give them or him?
It's a great question. I would say worry less, take more risks. I would say celebrate who you are and the experience that you bring. It's of value. You can create impact. Try and head towards something that you're passionate about and surround yourselves with those that celebrate that passion. Don't be afraid of hard work too. You have to build up your experience, learn, watch, ask lots and lots of questions. If I think about one thing always to do is volunteer. If you're interested in a particular area and there's not a role yet, ask how I can help. I've done the same with ESG at JP Morgan, and I'm now lead for ESG payments at JP Morgan in our business globally. And that's because I've got an interest in this area, I've got a passion, and nobody else is filling that slot. And before you know it, people are assuming you're that person, you're that expert, and you run with it. So again, as a 21-year-old, try and work out your passion. If not, sample lots of stuff. Find great mentors, people that can give you advice, watch, listen, learn, basic stuff.
Basic stuff. Well, not so basic, Michael, but thank you for sharing with everyone. So I know you personally have done a lot of work with apprenticeship work and really harnessing the collective, in particular in the Luxembourg. And so I wonder if you wouldn't mind just sharing a little bit of that work that you've done, Michael, and the impact of that work.
Yeah, I'd love to. This is an area that I'm incredibly passionate about. And so when I draw upon my previous experiences and we think about what allows, those leadership qualities, and I think about my own journey, I think about empathy, and I think about helping others, actually. And I was given a lift, I was given an opportunity, and I'd like to think that I broke through that social mobility that I talked about earlier. And I'd like others, and I've always wanted to help others to do the same. And so there was a great opportunity based upon business need, actually, as well as social conscience, that within Luxembourg, a team of us came together. And I would say it's not just me, but a team of us at JP Morgan came together and said, we want to help. And there is talent in other areas, not just the traditional routes of graduates, but that's important too. But there's others from other backgrounds, other educational backgrounds, for one reason or other, may not have the opportunity to go to university and higher education. But it doesn't mean to say they're not talented, and that talent doesn't exist in those areas. And we do have a shortfall of talent within Luxembourg, so we don't have the luxury to otherwise ignore this. And so, again, a few of us came together. We worked out that there was a government-sponsored program. We were the first financial firm to engage within that, facilitated by the Chamber of Commerce and a local school, where basically we went into the class, and it was the first year they'd run an English-speaking administration course, and there was 8 individuals that were on that course. And we interviewed them, and we took all 8 on, and they worked out fantastically. And the aptitude, the attitude, the commitment, and actually the general morale uplift is given to our entire location in support of those people has been nothing short of an absolute success. And so that was the first year that we ran it. In the second year, I contacted a number of clients, competitor institutions, because we collaborate well in Luxembourg, in matters like this. And so for the second iteration of it, there were 8 employers, ourselves, and a number of other asset managers, custodian banks. And so my hope is, and we've got further discussions with the ministries about how to broaden out the programme. So it afforded opportunity, and particularly with those 8, they were immigrants, economic migrants, refugees for a large part into Luxembourg, who struggled with the local language and therefore were struggling to get work, to augment their studies. So given that we're predominantly an English-speaking bank, then it meant that their English-speaking backgrounds as well, helped them. And so we took on all 8. We took on more the following year. My hope is that this becomes firmly established as another channel of talent into the financial sector, because A, it's the right thing to do. Also, it's good for business too, and it's certainly good for Luxembourg and supporting those coming into Luxembourg as well.
Michael, I've got goosebumps listening to your story. I'm really, really heartened to hear that work that's been going on. Really, really important work. A question for you: is there anything more that the financial services industry as a whole you think can do to make it more attractive to young talent that is out there?
Yeah, and there's always work to do. And when we talk about making Luxembourg sustainable, making it an attractive destination to develop your career, it can be and is all those things. But you've always got to keep an eye on the future as well. And so when I think about changing roles, and technology has and will continue to have a significant impact on the way that we operate, which is great because it develops new services, it encourages to develop new skills and new roles. And that's where I think that we have to start thinking ahead for Luxembourg. Many of the roles that we have now will change by virtue of technology and become automated and using different tools, etc. Then we want to be more exception oriented. We want to be in the role of software and coding and more client solution roles here within Luxembourg. So I think working with government to make sure that actually we create an attractive environment that encourages global firms like a JP Morgan to think Luxembourg, not just a back office or operational duties, but as we're thinking about front office, as we're thinking about design, deployment, then we want it to be an attractive centre. And that's where I think working with government to encourage employers to think about that, to develop the skills, and for government agencies to promote those skills and learnings and outcomes at colleges, further education. And then I think that can be mapped with also encouraging, whether it's through taxation or otherwise, global firms to place those roles into Luxembourg. So if you get the demand side and the supply side right, then you're heading off, for that change that's occurring. And it's actually occurring quite rapidly when I think about use of blockchain or otherwise. So again, I think it needs to be a public-private partnership. And I see it working in other jurisdictions already. And I would just encourage that maybe Luxembourg needs to think about doing the same to make sure, again, there continues to be growth and there continues to be the right jobs and keep people interested and employed.
Absolutely. And so, you're one of the rare people on Flex in the City that have actually worked both in the United Kingdom and in Luxembourg, and now you're beginning your journey in Ireland. So I'm curious, if you've got any specific observations about the different approaches in those centres, and what you've observed is really great about those different approaches.
Well, it's early days in Dublin. I'm very excited to be here. So I'm going to take a pause on Dublin just yet to make that comment. But what I would say is people have been incredibly friendly, and I appreciate that. It has echoes of Luxembourg, let's put it that way. I miss Luxembourg. I want to put that on the table first and foremost. It's a very unique environment. If I contrast that to the UK, it's an environment which is very competitive. It has all the global leading financial firms positioned within Luxembourg. But there's also a camaraderie about brand Luxembourg and appropriate collaboration taking place around the brand of UCITS, protecting that security, collaborating for D&I and people efforts across the financial organisations. And I think that's pretty unique, and making sure that we work together through industry bodies to examine and clarify for regulatory demands. This is an ecosystem which the proximity encourages that collaboration, and for a very successful country, and it's in its interests, to make sure that we continue to sustain the environment. So everybody works together, and I think that's pretty unique. And I'd like to, if I compare that to the UK, and a big financial centre, but that proximity or lack thereof just produces different outcomes. So again, I'd say Luxembourg is unique. I'm hoping that Dublin is similar, because they are similar in terms of how they support the financial community. But I'll certainly take my learnings from Luxembourg and promote those in Dublin. And who knows, there could be even closer collaborations between Dublin and Luxembourg as well, given their mutual interests.
There are lots of mutual interests, aren't there? And I think it is about harnessing the great collective in the industry. What kind of skills do you think, Michael, are going to be needed more and more in the next 5 to 10 years? Obviously, we're just at the beginning of artificial intelligence. So what do you think is going to be more and more needed by both individual contributors and leaders?
Yeah, I think all the way up, most senior, junior persons, when you're looking at data and you're looking at insights, I think, there is soft skills, and particularly actually in a place like Luxembourg, because given the size of the substance, and if I took JP Morgan as an example, you're constantly communicating with those colleagues in other countries in larger centres. So communication, collaboration is key. Again, as we're looking at new technologies and understanding those and their impact into the operating model. So again, if we look at blockchain and the use of AI, etc., those are going to be highly impactful. So I still think you need the technical skills. You need to understand the impact and the power of data to drive client solutions. But then you need to do something with that. You need to communicate ideas. You need to understand the trends of the environment that you're working within, and you need to be able to promote ideas, new products, new manufacturing. So with all of this, I think cognitive skills, soft skills are ever more important, but technical is important there too. And I would encourage people to be curious. I know I am. I can't say that I'm the most technically savvy person. I try to be. I try to keep up to date. There's a huge wealth of knowledge. I mentioned earlier that ESG is very important to me. And if I think about Luxembourg, Luxembourg's a great centre for sharing information, for learning, and to be able to have a voice too. So if I think about, again, the university, I went along to and attended an ESG certification course there for a week. Luxembourg House of Training has really wonderful courses, bite-sized, that you could do, in the evenings, weekends. And many of these you can actually meet in person or do virtually as well. So there's lots of different mechanisms, obviously ALFI, industry groups. There's a wealth of information, learning. But ultimately, what it provides for, and I should have mentioned this in the previous question, but it's network. And the ability to gain insights, the ability, as I mentioned, to collaborate where it makes sense to do so, but the ability to learn and present opportunity for the individual as they progress their career. I feel like I'm a tourist board ambassador now for Luxembourg, but there really is no better place than Luxembourg to be able to generate that network, which can really propel and deliver on your career ambitions. And there's infrastructure there too. And if you're unsure, then go onto the websites, have a look at this great sustainability website. The university, as I say, is doing lots of different courses. The Chamber of Commerce has lots of information. Paper Jam. I'm sure your website, Rachel, I'm sure there are lots of pointers there as well. So I just encourage people to take advantage of it. I certainly did, and I'll certainly be back to do so again.
Fantastic. So I've got a tough question for you now, Michael, tough coaching question. If you were to create a leadership model for the future, for leaders in financial services, what would be the 3 key parts of this model? What would be the 3 key words you'd have on that model to inspire leaders? Tough question.
It is indeed. Okay, I'm going to go for this. I'm going to say, number 1, you have to be authentic. And I would put within that group, those interpersonal skills that allow empathy, EQ to really connect and resonate. Then those are skills that you can develop too. And I would say that's an important pillar of leadership. Number 2, I would say that as a leader, then you have to set the vision and you have to allow people to understand that what they do has impact. And you're there to help connect between what the individual does, how it delivers, and why it's important, and find that community dependency too within that. I think if you've got the vision, you can connect with people. Then thirdly, I do think you have to deliver for people too. And so you have to be interested. You have to support the development of people. I think from then you can rely upon people. Then you can understand people's strengths. You can develop people, coach persons, and acknowledge, for the success and contribution that individuals make. So with all of this, I think, again, number 1, it becomes those EQ skills that you should develop as a leader to motivate, to understand, to empathize. And number 2, set the vision, allow people to understand why they do what they do. And 3, acknowledge for their efforts, the success. There are, say, even the failures, but we learn from those. And so wrap that all up. And then I think you've got a structure for leadership.
I love it. We'll have to pull together a little model for you, Michael. Fantastic. Outside of financial services and being a leadership guru, what do you love doing, Michael?
Question again. I love sports. I love triathletes or triathletes. I love triathlons even. I like the fact that when you do it, it really takes your mind off. You have to 100% focus. I like the fact that you just keep on going. You're actually competing with yourself. There's always somebody ahead of you. There's always somebody faster. But it's endurance and it's focus. And you think about the finish line, but the joy that you get when you cross it, it just allows me to be completely 100% absorbed. But you do get a lot of help along that journey as well. And so when I draw parallels to careers and jobs and that dependency upon others, even though it's an individual sport, then I have broken down a few times. It's amazing how people come to your help because there's camaraderie with it as well. So I enjoy it all, whether it's rain or shine. There's always a challenge. And there's a variety of sports too, so you can always test different skills. But when you cross that line, there's real team spirit that I really enjoy every single time. It never fades.
And so what I'm hearing and what I'm taking away from this great podcast, Michael, is that team spirit, is about harnessing the collective. It is about bringing people together to make this industry the great industry that it is. Michael Fox, thank you so much for being with us today on Flex in the City. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rachel. That was a pleasure.
You just listened to Flex in the City. Catch us on our next episode.